Who's the most skilled assassin in Assassin's Creed? You've probably wondered that, right? Well, today we're finally ranking them. And trust me, this one's tough because there are a lot of contenders. Anyway, here are the tiers. The first one is the Undisputed GOAT, and the remaining are Legendary, Elite, High, Mid, and Meh. Now, you probably know what each tier means, but just to clarify, Meh doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they don't quite measure up to the others. Oh, and we're not including Cassandra because, let's be honest, she's in a league of her own. Starting off chronologically, we've got the very first assassin, Bayek of Siwa. Now, he wasn't always an assassin. Before all of this, he was a Medjay, a protector of Egypt's people. But that doesn't mean he's a pussy. You had to be brave, skilled, and maybe just a little bit insane to pull it off. But Bayek? He made it look easy. In the Assassin's Creed Origins prequel comic, he faced off against Bayon, one of the deadliest hunters in Assassin's Creed history. But Bayek being Bayek took him down in pure Bayek fashion. After Khemu's death though, that's when his true potential really showed. We realized that he wasn't just some muscle with a sword. He was tactical, calculated, and above all, dangerously skilled. He could handle pretty much every weapon in Egypt, slip through cities like he owned them, and even got familiar with the hidden blade. Well, kind of familiar. And for a guy from ancient times like him, he proved he was built different. He's earned his respect, and honestly, I'd say he comfortably sits in the elite tier. What more do you need to know about this guy? This man has every quality to earn his spot on this list. First off, he isn't even fully human, which already gives him a serious edge. He understands the past, the present, and even glimpses of the future. And can you imagine someone with that level of intellect failing? Probably not. Sure, he was once bested by a machine, but even that somehow turned into his favor. It's like he's always 10 steps ahead. When it comes to stealth, he's an absolute beast. According to the official lore, he's so fast that even the Animus can't register his movements. It literally looks like he's teleporting. Lore-wise, that makes him the fastest assassin ever. But of course, if you're that powerful, you've got to have a nerf somewhere, right? In Basim's case, it's combat. He's a bit fragile and can go down faster than you'd expect. That said, his current self in the present day is a whole different story. Maybe things have changed. Oh, and fun fact, Basim became a master assassin in his 20s. For comparison, even Ezio had to hit his mid-30s to reach that level. So considering everything, Basim deserves a spot in the legendary tier. Coming to the man who actually bested Basim, Eivor. And he's a tough one, and there's no doubt about it. As a master combatant, he can wield multiple weapons, both heavy and light, often at the same time. That alone gives him a serious edge, allowing him to take on beasts, armies, and even mythical creatures without breaking a sweat. On top of that, he's the reincarnation of Odin, just like Basim is of Loki, which means he carries a higher percentage of Isu DNA in his blood. But the question is, does that make him highly skilled? Well, no. While Eivor dominates in combat, his stealth game is practically non-existent. And for those who have played AC Valhalla, they know it pretty well. There's rarely a moment in the entire game where he's actually undetected. Add that to his heavy build and you've got a character who feels more like a walking battering ram. Even his parkour feels sluggish. So yeah, he's not your traditional assassin and the focus is clearly on brute force over stealth. And with that being said, would respectfully place Eivor in the mid-tier. Finally, we're entering the League of the OGs, and who better to start with than the legendary Altair himself. Honestly, I don't think there's much you don't know about this guy. He was the youngest master assassin and mentor. Unlike Eivor or Basim, he was completely human. Sure, he had a trace of Isu DNA that explains the eagle vision, but other than that, he was pure skill and discipline. He literally defeated his own mentor who wielded the Apple of Eden, and won. And here's the thing, Altair wasn't just good at one thing, he was good at everything. And that's not just fan talk, but even the games and the community agree on this. He spent decades studying the apple, gaining knowledge and wisdom far beyond any ordinary human, refining both his mind and his blade to perfection. The Templars of his time feared him. To them, he was a ghost, capable of striking from the shadows without ever being seen. And if that's not enough, let me tell you one more thing. Do you guys remember in Assassin's Creed 1's final sequence? He fought through all the knights alone just to reach King Richard. And that's not just impressive, that's GOAT level. And now comes the part which you might already know. In Assassin's Creed 1, the bar that you see on the screen is not actually his health bar, it's his synchronization bar, meaning he never actually got hit throughout the entire game. Let that sink in. So yeah, argue all you want in the comments, but the facts speak for themselves. Altair checks every box there is, which is why he rightfully belongs in the Undisputed GOAT tier. Let's see who else does. Just like Altair, Ezio Auditore da Firenze is a fan favorite, and for a good reason. He's the only assassin ever to have an entire trilogy dedicated to his journey, and that alone makes him stand out. In terms of skill, Ezio truly follows in Altair's footsteps. Sure, he starts off rash and impulsive, but over the course of his story, we witness his transformation. He transforms himself from a vengeful young man to a calm, calculated master assassin and mentor. And that's what makes Ezio special. We see him learn everything right before our own eyes. Let it be his training, his mastery of weapons, tools, stealth, combat, and even leadership. By the end, he isn't just skilled, he's complete. In AC Brotherhood, Ezio can chain kill enemies effortlessly, making him a one-man army. For stealth, he commands his own set of recruits to carry out assassinations like a true strategist. But he doesn't stop there. In Revelations, even at 50 years old, he's more dangerous than ever. Not to mention he can literally predict his enemies' movements, and because of this, the Templars don't even feel like real threats anymore. They just feel like obstacles in his path. Yet, he still keeps his focus on his one mission, to recover the secrets of the Masyaf castle. But was that poor writing or just Ezio's sheer aura? We'll let you decide. Either way, Ezio's skill, experience, and legacy easily place him near the very top in Legendary. I bet many of you love him now, but initially that wasn't the case. Back when Connor Kenway first appeared, he got a lot of hate. But let's be honest, that doesn't take away from the fact that he was one of the most brutal and feared assassins of his era. Connor lost everything at a young age, and while that would have broken most people, it forged him. Even before joining the Brotherhood, he could take down literal bears, sneak up on animals, and hunt with precision. But after joining the Assassins officially, he combined the best of both worlds and became an absolute powerhouse. His arsenal included tomahawks, clubs, swords, and axes, all paired with the Brotherhood's traditional stealth tools. In short, he's basically the Batman of Assassin's Creed. On top of his combat mastery, he's an expert tracker. Even in blizzards or dense snow where visibility is near zero, he uses the environment to his advantage, turning nature itself into his ally. But the only downside is that he doesn't get to use his stealth as much in the story, which is kind of tragic, considering how skilled he really is. But overall, Connor's a beast of his own, and for that, would confidently place him in the elite tier. One of our absolute favorites, Edward Kenway, the man who shaped the entire Kenway bloodline. But do not confuse him for just a pirate turned assassin. He's more than that. In the start of AC4, while being shot, he kills a trained assassin in combat. That's right, he kills him straight up. Then, disguised as Duncan Walpole, he sails to Havana where he takes on several highly trained assassins and defeats them too. But if this isn't enough, let me tell you one more thing. He sneaks into an entire island full of assassins, infiltrates their most secure location without being detected. And let's not forget all of this happened before he even officially joined the Brotherhood. Sounds crazy, right? But things are about to get even more crazier. If we talk about combat, do you really think I need to explain this? Blackbeard, who was the most feared pirate in the Caribbean, feared him. And for a good reason. In Black Flag, you can clear out enemy decks, forts, and camps effortlessly, hence taking down foes twice your size like it's nothing. And before anyone says, yeah, but the combat was easy, remember one thing, that was by design. It was made to show just how powerful Edward really was. And when it comes to sailing, no one does it better than him. Where most assassins struggle to hide himself, Edward hid an entire ship and used it for tailing missions. This man operated on another level entirely. But honestly, it's a shame how Ubisoft wrote his death because Edward Kenway was a legend in every sense of the word. So it only makes sense for me to honor his legacy and place him in the legendary tier. Although it's not wise for us to include Shay here because he became a Templar later on. But who cares? Let's do it anyway. His gameplay is almost identical to Edward's because both games operate on the same engine. But this doesn't make him any less of a monster in everything. In the prologue of the Game of Swords, you're on the assassin side, where he's shown to be well above any average assassin because he makes his own luck. And this includes him surviving the destruction of an entire city, so he's agile, that's confirmed. Then, he steals the manuscript from the assassins and almost succeeds in escaping them, but we all know how things end. Now here's where things get interesting. Once he fully transitions towards the Templars, he's being hunted by the assassins and survives the surprise attacks of assassin stalkers from almost everywhere he goes, and it's a huge feat because we know how deadly the assassins are. And also killing and defeating your own mentors who once trained you is no small feat. Not even in combat or stealth, but even in the sea, he killed Adewale, the same man who was with Edward. So yeah, Shay isn't your everyman, he's different. And for that, let's put our guy in the legendary tier. He deserves that spot. Arno is the most underrated protagonist in the series ever. And many of you think from our older videos that we straight up hate him, but that's not the case. We only hate how the story played out, not who he is. Hope that clears things up. When it comes to skill set, he leans more towards stealth and agility. Although in the game, he has access to a lot of weapons, but his combat isn't really up to the mark. And he loses most of the time in open conflict. But surprisingly, it makes sense because Unity is a stealth-centered game. And to be fair, it also depends on your in-game build. On the stealth side, this guy isn't less than anyone. He has all the necessary equipment that an assassin needs. One of his highlights is the Phantom Blade, which ejects a blade on command. Pretty cool, right? However, in the game's black box missions, which is how he canonically assassinated his targets, you can clearly see his maneuverability and stealth prowess. He's a straight-up tactician who uses creative ways to hunt his targets, which is always fun and satisfying to see. But what makes him even more impressive is that despite being trained for only 2 years and 2 months, he managed to kill his mentor Pierre Belec, who stood against him and even defeated the Templar Grand Master who had the Sword of Eden in his possession. So Arno isn't a nobody, he's much more than that, but if you compare him to the other assassins mentioned, he deserves a spot in the high tier. Syndicate for the first time ever featured 2 protagonists, as it was a trend during those times. But to save your time, we'll talk about both of them in a single section. For Jacob, he's more focused on combat and brute force, and that's actually part of his character. Instead of following the typical assassin norms, he relies more on connections, combat, and his gang called the Rooks. When stealth is necessary, he can pull it off pretty well. Although there are only a few segments in the story where he does it perfectly, because most of the time it either ends up with him blowing his cover or the entire location. And not to forget how badly he was humbled in Jack the Ripper DLC. So Syndicate fans, don't get me wrong, Jacob's a skill fighter, but compared to others, I think he belongs in the mid tier. As for Evie, we'll make it clear, we're not here to simp. But she's the definition of a well-rounded assassin. Her skill set is focused mainly on stealth with a bit of combat mixed in. In Syndicate, most of her missions revolve around stealthy infiltrations, recovering artifacts or information, and even taking out targets quietly. She rarely engages in open conflict because canonically she prefers stealth. Originally, I'd place her in the same tier as Jacob, but after the events of the game, she traveled to India with Henry Green and trained with the Indian Brotherhood, who were some of the deadliest assassins in the 1800s. And to top that off, she killed Jack, the same person who ravaged London and captured Jacob. So yeah, I'd say high tier suits her perfectly. Most people skip this pair, but we'll do justice. We will not. Adewale, as you all know, well, everybody knows, was the quartermaster of the Jackdaw. Later, he joined the assassins alongside Edward and went on to free countless slaves in the Caribbean while fighting the Templars in his own DLC, Freedom Cry. Now, we don't get to spend much time with him to truly know his full potential, but from what we do see, we can tell that while he may be decent in stealth, it isn't really showcased much. Around 70 to 80% of the game focuses on freeing slaves and boarding ships. Still, the small sections that do show stealth are fairly well done, and given his size, he actually pulls it off impressively. Then comes Aveline. She's definitely more creative with her stealth abilities since she can disguise herself, and she's also solid in combat, as seen in her DLCs. So to sum it all up, Adewale goes to the mid tier and Aveline goes to meh tier. The latest set of protagonists in this massive series, and we're talking about Naoe and Yasuke. If we talk specifically about Naoe, she perfectly embodies the classic assassin essence. She's agile, stealth-oriented, and surprisingly better in combat than some protagonists who solely focus on stealth. And if you've watched our previous videos, you already know when it comes to stealth, she's on another level. From using shadows to her advantage and to relying on her tools creatively, she excels in everything. She even managed to sneak into the Honnoji Palace to kill Oda Nobunaga without being detected. That alone shows how skilled she really is, and depending on your playthrough, she easily defeats majority of her opponents. Though since her core focus is stealth, it takes a bit more time. But again, that depends on who you choose during those missions, so it's not entirely canon. Coming to Yasuke, the last person we have, this man is a combat god. Simple as that. But unfortunately, that's all he's a master of. He cannot perform stealth even if you do try because his brutal assassination will alert everyone. And parkour, don't get me started on that because he cannot even jump properly. In the story, there are only a handful of moments where we see his intelligence shine. Even Oda himself used to take his advice sometimes because he believed in him. But sadly, that's not enough for us to rank him higher. Whereas Naoe easily lands in the high tier. And there you go. This is our official tier list for the most skilled protagonists in Assassin's Creed. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, make sure to let us know in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, goodbye.